Good afternoon, Richland College.
Good afternoon.
Welcome back, folks. It is the Philosophy Club Radio Hour. You are listening to KDUX Web Radio, broadcast live from Richland College in Dallas, Texas. We are the voice of Richland College. Views expressed on this show are our own, unless otherwise stated, and do not reflect the opinion of KDUX Web Radio, Richland College, or the Dallas County Community College District. Happy to be here, y'all. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday,
Happy
man.
hump
How
day.
are you doing out there? Happy Wednesday,
How's
man.
everybody doing? Excellent.
It's great. Happy Wednesday.
Yes.
Shout out to Wednesday.
Shout out to Wednesdays.
Shout out to Wednesdays.
Shout
That'll do
out-
it,
shout out
folks.
to Wednesday
Thanks for
Adams.
listening. Well, I guess we'll get into introductions first. But once again, this is the Philosophy Club Radio Hour. It's an extension of the Philosophy Club. The Philosophy Club proper meets every Tuesday this semester, fall 2017, from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. in room EO76. So it's that room by the elevator and the bathrooms there in El Paso Lounge. And we record the day after every Wednesday. So let's make some introductions here. We got a couple of the Philosophy Club student officers and then a friend and colleague of mine here as well.
I'm going to try to come up with a name real quick. My name is James Franco. I'm a famous actor.
Yeah.
I was in Pineapple Express. I see one of my posters over there.
Thanks for coming in, James.
No problem, man. I'm very interested in this type of stuff.
Yeah, I could tell. James, if I'm not mistaken, you taught at Ivy League schools.
I have.
Yeah,
So,
that's pretty impressive.
just coming to Texas, looking around at all the community colleges. This is the best one by far, honestly. It's
okay.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Shout out Richland College.
He's being perfectly frank. Oh.
I'm leaving. I'm never coming back again.
Tony.
Yeah, it's your boy, young Cassius Clay. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, I'm just here, listening,
I like
Alright,
it.
I can appreciate that.
Who do you think would win, Cassius Clay or McGregor there?
Muhammad
No comment.
Ali. Muhammad Ali.
I think so, too. He's the greatest. And then,
goat.
to my right. So to my right, we have, again, Professor John Ewing of the Philosophy and Religion Department, a colleague of mine. John here, he oversees the Phi Theta Kappa chapter here at Richland, which is an amazing thing. The Honor Society here at Richland College, if you weren't aware. Definitely see John if you feel as though you're interested and qualify. And I'm thrilled to have him here. So you're doing double duty then, right? Because you just came off a radio show.
I am. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks.
It's sort of serendipitous because I was just Patrick Moore's guest on his show, and I heard from a couple of your students here that actually one of my students too, that your topic was related to the world of religion. So I'm interested.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, and thanks for coming back. And, of course, you can see John came on season 2 as well. So he's been a guest on here before. And also, let's shout out here, More and Friends, I believe is the title of the radio program that's right before us, where Professor Moore from the government department, he's interviewing various faculty members from different departments. So you get an understanding of what the different disciplines offer. And it's a really awesome idea for a show. I think it's fantastic. And so, I'm glad it is fortuitous because, again, the topic is the following, and I guess it's more of a question. And this was Uche's topic idea. Could we ever get to a point where religion is obsolete for society? Now we met yesterday. It was the biggest turnout so far of the Philosophy Club this semester. We had almost 30 people there.
Wow.
Mixing of faculty members from different departments, staff, and students, of course. And everybody came equipped with I would say passion, with opinion, conviction, yes, and it certainly remained respectful, of course, but it also, when we're talking about religion, we're talking about a central feature of most people's lives, as it's been for the history of humanity, and so it's you get into the nitty gritty, and sometimes that's personal.
Which faculty did you have yesterday?
Oh gosh, I actually just met him for the first time yesterday. I'd have to go back and look at the list.
Is Neil a faculty member? Neil?
No, Neil is I believe he works in advising. I think he's a staff member.
Neil Abrams.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
He's been a Philosophy Club member for a while now, and he's great. He told some rather interesting stories.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so I guess we can move on to the next segment, which is what is it? Re-quack, the Philosophy Club re-quack. So what that means, that signals the coming back, circling around of yesterday's topic. And again, the benefit of meeting on Wednesdays this semester and having the club meet on Tuesdays is that there's a quick turnaround, so everything's still relatively
We
fresh
know
in our
this
minds.
stuff now.
Yeah, we got it. We still enough to think back,
We
like, oh,
got
what did
this
that person say? So, does anybody want to give a requack? Do you guys want to give it a shot here? Y'all both were there.
I will attempt to give
Okay,
it a
go
crack.
for it.
I'll attempt to just kick off where I think that the class started.
Awesome. Club.
Yeah, the club started. I think we started with the function of religion, because if we're going to look at how it becomes obsolete, then that means its function has ceased to benefit us or has ceased to affect us at all.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
that questioning what the function of religion, why we need it, what it provides for us, can help us narrow down our thoughts on how it may end in the future.
Okay, yeah. That is the trajectory it took. Definitely for the first half hour, I would say. Yeah, Anthony, can you think of anything else? Like, were there any salient points that people made on that?
I remember the point that I made was
Okay, let me hear it.
to answer that question was that religion was established in order to maintain order in a sense. Like, oh, why do I have to follow the law? Because it's what God wants, or it's because what Allah wants, you know? Because religion, I've heard many times that it was institutionalized by man to not create, but keep order.
Mm-hmm.
And that function has been filled by stricter laws and governments and whatnot. And then the point was brought up by Emma and Brian.
Right.
That
Shout out Emma, shout out Brian.
Shout out Brian. Shout
shout
out
out
Emma.
communications
Emma.
officer.
There she is.
Anyway.
You the man. Brian, you the woman. I'm kidding.
We should probably have tweeted, because by the way, guys, the Philosophy Club has a Facebook page and a Twitter handle now. Get at us
Tweet.
at
There you go.
RLC Philosophy. We should tweet that we're on the air right now. I think Emma usually does that, but she got held up.
Is she okay? Did they steal her money?
Yeah, I think she's fine. She's
Held
okay.
up.
I think she had traffic is really the deal. But look for us, guys, on Facebook. Just go to the search tool, Facebook, Richland Philosophy Club. Richland College. You'll find a lot. Richland Philosophy Club, and then at RLC Philosophy. Sorry, shameless plug. Continue.
Yeah. So Emma and Brian made the point that religion gives certain people the grounded spiritual feeling that Brian so happens to lack in. Feel envy towards people who have this grounding for so they were saying the purpose of not the purpose but like a purpose of religion is that it gives them a spiritual grounding to I don't have to worry about what happens after I die. I can just go to heaven. And they can just have faith in that. It's something to have faith in is what they were saying.
Yeah, the idea of it being consoling or comforting was a big theme in the discussion yesterday. That religion's function is to provide comfort for a lot
And
of people.
support.
Which we can
Structure.
Okay, yeah, and then the other side of it is that structure is it gives your life purpose or significance, perhaps, because you're maybe set in a much greater, more sophisticated, deeper context.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we could debate that. I mean, well, let me ask you: do you think that religion provides, I don't know, comforts for people, and maybe that's its primary function?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with William James when in on the varieties of religious experience. He does lay out that, a traditional way of looking at why religion arose is simply a fearful impulse. The volcano erupts, therefore the gods must be angry, and how can we prevent that from happening again, etc. So William James does mention that, but he also talks about an impulse for joy. And that's something that really resonates with me. When the Buddhist practitioner meditates, when the Muslim adherent, does his or her prayers, when the Catholic goes to Mass and receives the sacrament, there's a good feeling in that, and it feels good. It's an impulse for joy. It's like a connectedness with the beyond, in a sense. And so I think that however that's reconfigured, I don't see that going away.
I was gonna piggyback off of something you said. It's like I feel like but religion's been a lot of time used to explain things that we don't really know. Like like you said earlier, Professor.
The volcano.
Yeah, the volcano's erupting, therefore the gods are angry. Oh, we had a dry season. We didn't sacrifice enough. The gods are angry with us. Too much rain, storms, just travesty in general has been justified as, oh, it's not weather. That's the gods not being happy with us or being pleased with us. And we still kind of use those elements today. Oh, what's the meaning of life? We live for God. We live for Allah. We live for whatever deity we believe in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So you can see also it provides structure in the same way that it comforts, as the structure itself is what's comforting. Oh, this happened. This tragedy befell me because.
But I know why.
What'd you say?
But I know why.
Yeah, exactly. I can account for it. I can create this sort of narrative where I didn't do this and so this happened, which grants me some element of control. So now I know what to do so that this doesn't happen. The world seems less chaotic early on.
So if it seems like at least half or partial or part of religion's function is to provide an explanation for the things that we don't have control over, the things that we don't know. But if science develops in a way that we can explain all of these things, would religion become obsolete at that point, or does it provide something else to us?
Yeah, and I think that's the heart of the question. Is religion something entirely or wholly unique? No pun intended. Am I right, folks? Pause for applause.
What the heck?
And if religion is something that's wholly unique, which is to say that you can't just reduce it to certain functions that it serves, and if we find a sleeker, more sporty kind of religion, and maybe we call it science, we can replace it, so it's kind of replaceable. Is that the case, or is it such that religion is something so remarkably unique and it serves such a particular?
No, I'm kidding.
Oh, wow.
Well, I mean, they have been replacing religions with more sleeker versions. Like,
Interesting.
The Romans, they stole the Greeks' religion and just renamed all the gods. They're like, oh, this is cool. We'll just do this for now. And then Christianity came along, and a lot of Romans became Christian. And they were like, oh, this is better. We don't have to pray to all those silly gods anymore. We just have to pray to one guy, And then over time, it might just evolve into that. Like, oh, hey, we don't need religion anymore. We don't need God. We have science. It's the new sleek thing, as you were saying.
But can science, the comfort that a religion gives you, that you know what's going to happen after you die, or you have faith in a belief that there is an eternal afterlife, can science really compensate, or can it even compete? It can explain the things, sure, as religion tried to explain the things, or as religion even failed to explain the things. But as far as providing comfort for the things that we do not know, science cannot cover things that science can't really tell you what happens after we die. There are things that only religion has attempted to tell us. Science can attempt it, but do we have as much?
Yeah.
Does science have as much credibility? Even though it should have more credibility if you think about it, more than just a holy book. But can science even compete in giving us the same comfort or extracting the same faith out of people?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, well, they make different claims. I feel like for science, it's trying to be descriptive. It's describing the laws of nature as we've come to understand it. Again, always cast in terms of hypothetical, which kind of, I think, grants it some similarity with religion. Science is always an hypothesis. The scientific truth can change due to further evidence and discovery. It seems like science seeks to describe where religion seeks to interpret. Where religion seeks meaning and significance, where science looks at more cause and effect, correspondences, corollaries. So it's almost like they're not trying to do the same thing. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I would like to add just one thing. I was thinking about this. I resonated with what you just said, Professor Jeff. But,
thanks.
and I talk about that in the world religions classes, that science is great at giving us the how.
Yeah.
Right, or the
that's
what.
The way to put it. Yeah.
But philosophy and religion really are the realms of the why. Why are we here, and is there any ultimate meaning, etc. So,
They aren't really competing.
What's that?
They aren't really competing, the two.
Right, and
aren't
maybe in some cases they're talking about the same world, but with different languages, and focusing on different things.
Definitely.
And I thought about this. Is religion the best explanation, or is it a good coping mechanism, or does it provide us with assurance of an afterlife, etc. And it can do all of those things, but it also provides us with a way to be comfortable in our own skins.
Huh.
In other words, that the world is a harsh place with floods in Houston or hurricanes and volcanoes and seismic activity, etc. Apart from the wars and everything that are going on, and when you look at the core of these religions, the Golden Rule in the Sermon on the Mount or the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha, it seems to me that one of the reasons maybe that we overlook when we're looking at these religions critically is the fact that they've spread and they've become popularized simply because they do improve people's basic position in life or their psychology or their well-being. In other words, if I interpret that, okay, I understand that people are going to call me names, but if I interpret the Buddha's teaching as I have no control over provocation, but I do have control over my response to provocation, then I can be a more tolerant, more well-adjusted human being. And so maybe that's an aspect of religion that we don't tend to look at, apart from the fear and the explanation of the natural disasters, and then also the joy that I mentioned, that the bliss or that we get from prayer and meditation, etc.
Yeah. So. Yeah, can you say? I think that's extremely insightful. Can you say more about the joy? Because I don't think that came up at all. That idea.
Right. I just remember William James. In my philosophy of religion class, we read the 3rd chapter, which was not really a book, but a series of lectures that were compiled in book form by William James on the varieties of religious experience. And he's trying to get at what does it mean to be religious. And he talks about fear. He talks about some of the various explanations that were floated. Social control. Sort of the conspiracy view of religious history that the Pharaoh kind of thought everything up and said, this is how I'm going to keep people under my thumb, basically. Yeah. And there's probably some truth to, at least a kernel of truth to that to a certain extent. But he talks about, and he looks at just phenomenologically the content of all of these, whether they're Pentecostals or whether they're Buddhists or whether they're Catholics, what drives people, and he tries to get at the basics of these visionary experiences or these kind of meditative or prayerful practices, and he talks about the impulse to joy, the impulse, I'm sure I'm misquoting him, but that there's more to religion than just being afraid of the world. Yeah. That it seems to be that there's a great comfort, and he lists various testimonial evidence is there, right? So-and-so was on a mountaintop and they felt connected to everything. Yeah. Maybe God wasn't personified for that person, but someone else maybe saw a vision of a departed relative and that was consoling. And that they were in a good place, you see. And so he mentions all of these sort of testimonials, and he's coming up with this basic notion that people derive joy from these experiences that we would call religious experiences.
Yeah, no, that's I think that's such a huge part of why people continue to choose to be religious, regardless of the particular denomination or religion in general. Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time believing that people are only religious because life is tough. It seems like that there has to be some additional benefit where one feels as though one's life is more
enhanced. Yeah,
enhanced. Maybe it's more enchanting in this sense. So this idea of providing structure and stuff, I think you're right, Anthony. This idea of it helps us make sense of things, and that helps us cope. And I think it's both. I think that maybe that might be what brings you to religion, but what keeps you religious could be this idea of, wow, I am experiencing joy, and I'm experiencing joy in a kind of way that I can only sort of access through religion, through religious searching. There might be something really beautiful about that science or anything else can't replace.
And the artistic side, the aesthetic side?
Oh, yeah.
So even if somebody's not a Mother Teresa or a St. Francis and having visions of angels or something like that, sometimes people feel left out, right? If they're in these traditions and they're like, well, gee, I haven't had any kind of, the light or anything.
Yeah.
But the music in the mass or the iconography, and they're enraptured by that, and they like that, and so there's an aesthetic side to it. And Patrick Moore, who was just here, he asked me one time, because he's a real music aficionado, and he loves various genres of music, and he said, do you think we would have all of this great classical music and et cetera, John Coltrane, for example, in the jazz world, if it weren't for the fact that these world religions existed that sort of fueled this inspirational view? So I wonder from the philosophical side if that got touched on at all yesterday, the aesthetic side or the beauty, right, of the religious, either the literature or the music or just the temples themselves.
I mean, interestingly enough, it didn't go in that direction, but I think it very well could have. I think the gist of the conversation focused on this idea of whether or not we can identify religion's function in our lives, I guess maybe even individually as well as socially and communally, and then from there, can we then say, well, I can do without it, or are these substitutes, or does it suggest that there's something maybe weak to you if you want to believe in a religion? And again, there are a lot of people, so I didn't do a whole lot of talking. And it seems like in all of those angles, in all of those sorts of questions, it was almost a concession that it takes work to be religious.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Sacrifice.
Yeah. And so maybe I can, in sort of maybe contemporary fashion, can I streamline what is religion doing for me? And can I get it in an easier, simpler fashion or form? And it seems like the other side of it, what you're suggesting here, and I think it's definitely true. There's something about the sophistication and complexity of religions that makes them irreducible. Perhaps.
What were the student responses to that question as far as religion becoming obsolete? Could you give us a nutshell? I wasn't there yesterday, so I apologize.
Well, there were a lot of opinions. Some people were saying things like they took a more humanist point of view of it, where they said that instead of focusing on a religion, they would focus just on improving themselves, and they wouldn't label the religion as Jesus, or because they would just see it as a conception of morals put together in one body, and they put it into a body as a way to make us personify with it easier. So Jesus taught us a way of life. Buddha would teach us a different way of life. Allah would teach us a different way of life. And instead they could just want to improve themselves on their own. And they would, instead of calling it by a person or by a thing, they would just call it the universe. And there are different takes on it. One question that I wanted to propose was, do you think that the benefits that religion gives you, where you can relish in the fact that you were part of a bigger scheme, do you think that you can get that without being religious? Can you just get that by playing off your own mind and off your own experiences and just personal growth? Do you think that it's something that's exclusive to religion, or can you even be religious just on your own?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm interested in what Professor Jeff would have to say, but this does come up now, I've noticed, more in the last 10, 15 years as a response. Younger people tend to say, I don't consider myself religious, but I'm spiritual.
Yeah, that came up.
And what I'm hearing from that is I'm not content with the traditional versions of religion, that were good for my grandma, the Baptist church, etc. But I'm okay with processing these experiences in a more open kind of a way that I'm comfortable with, at the beach, on the mountaintop, or even in my own room, let's say, playing video games. I don't know. But maybe one of the reasons why religion, because religion has been done for so long, it's a tradition, it's a path that's been trodden by so many, and so maybe it's an easier form to do that. as opposed to just kind
Paving
of
your
being
own
on
way.
your own. But definitely there are people who would see themselves as spiritual, however you define that, but not necessarily tied to a particular official religion.
It seems like religion, it almost promotes a deep thought or a deeper connection with things that are more abstract. And it doesn't seem that you cannot do that without religion. So like a philosopher would have a same kind of experience as maybe a person who's super invested into Christianity. They feel in touch not with a God, but with their mind or with the truth or with the oneness. It seems like it's something that is almost demanded by our nature, that we have to try to achieve these things, or we have to try to at least reach for these things because we have the potential to do it.
Yeah, no, please.
Yeah. I feel like not a lot of people, but like,
A lot of people.
yeah, a lot. No,
I don't know what you're going to say.
I feel like more people who are agnostic or theists, not necessarily religious, but they believe in a God, think more about that kind of stuff, like the afterlife and what happens when you die and all the deep things that we don't typically try and think about, more than someone who's religious and follows Jesus's commands to a T and whatnot. Because to the theist, to the person who doesn't follow the religion but believes in a God, they would say, oh, well, I don't know how this God functions. I don't know what he did. I just know that he created this or whatever. And then I don't know what that God has laid out for everyone after the grand scheme of things, or in the grand scheme of things. But the Christian, the Catholic, would just, without a second, in a lot of cases, without a second thought, would just be like, oh, well, there's heaven and hell. That's it. And that's just it, you know?
Yeah. So it's not that they plumb the depths of the religion, but they like to know that there is a grand scheme.
Right.
Yeah, and it's and this came up too. This idea again. If you're a Christian, you have a certain understanding of all of history that begins in Genesis and it ends with heaven on earth. Like it's like you see the beginning and the end right off the bat, and then you find your place therein. Although I did want to bring up something else too before I forget. I guess Uche, you kind of did remark on the sort of poetic aspect of religion yesterday. You talked about how it requires metaphor and like figurative language and symbolism and stuff like that. I mean, I think that would qualify as part of the beauty. I mean, you don't see a lot of metaphor in science.
Yeah.
You don't see as much metaphor in philosophy.
That's arguable.
There could be something. Yeah, there could be something to this idea that, as y'all are saying, it's in our nature to be able to see things symbolically, figuratively, with meaning and significance, not merely just describing the actual empirical thing itself, but
Deeper than that.
Yeah, interpreting it. We almost do so by our very nature, as you said. Religion seems to be something that allows us to do that in a very, what you might call, deep and therefore supreme way. The poetic elements of religion, the mythical elements of religion, it's easy for us nowadays to kind of laugh that off and say, well, that's so ridiculous. That defies the laws of physics. But it's like, yeah, exactly. That's the point of it. It's trying to teach you a point that really you can't put in literal terms. You need to put it in more of artistic or poetic terms. And we have, as humans, it seems like we have the ability to see it that way, to receive it in such a way, and then it touches us more so than just simply in the mind. I think it holds our heart in its hands, something like that.
And also we can lose our separate sense of ego, right? Most
yeah.
of these religious visions or ecstasies, etc., whether you're reading Teresa of Avila or, a Buddhist treatise on attaining levels of nirvana or something, it's always that sense of the raindrop hitting the surface of the ocean and realizing that things on a very deep, subtle level, and the astrophysicists would probably agree with this, are connected, right?
Yeah.
That the universe, supposedly the laws of physics work because they work not only on planet Earth, but if you were to go out to a distant galaxy, they would work uniformly there as well. So there's that notion, at least in religious or spiritual ecstasy, of, again, I think it's a Buddhist analogy, but the idea of that we see reality from a very limited perspective, and it's not that the material changes; it's still H2O. But once it hits the surface of the ocean, it recognizes that it's part of this whole, in a sense.
That's amazing. Yeah, exactly. And so, pushing that, religion and science, not only are they maybe not competing, but they could be complementary. Science can kind of back up maybe religious suggestion, and similarly, religions can promote a sort of grander narrative where science fits in there. I think some people think, science is our way of trying to investigate the mystery that God sort of instilled this earth with. And so science is actually, given that it has a rational component to it, and we're rational creatures, and we're made in God's image, which is to say we're made with reason, it seems as though there's something perfectly in our nature with both science and religion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think the fact that religion has stuck in our culture throughout history, and that it has become something so ingrained in us, if you actually take a step back and look at the fact that by choice millions of people believe in these things, and by choice millions of people practice the rituals daily, on a daily basis, it shows that the same way you see a dog like walk to water and lick it, the same way it's almost something that we it's just something that's in our nature, not comparing it to a dog eating food or something.
No, I hear you.
But it's like, it's just something that's in our nature. It's something that just comes almost natural to us.
Yeah, and so the question is then, is it in our nature to be religious per se, or is it in our nature to find meaning in the world? And religion is just the kind of way we went with it for a long time.
I think it's probably the first way.
Okay, interesting.
To find meaning in the world.
Yeah, okay, and then religion might be just a particular method of doing that. Yeah, interesting. But then that would suggest that, well, maybe, what if we found a better way of doing that goes beyond religion? And if you can talk in terms of better and worse, that's maybe misleading. But what if we were to say, okay, religion is how we understand meaning in the world, and it's how sort of we're shown meaning in the world. But what if somehow, and I can't even imagine conceptually what this might look like, so maybe this suggests a response. I mean, what if we can find something that does that on an even more grander, more poetic way?
Yeah, like, what if science were to spell out the meaning of life?
Yeah, something like
and
that.
Prove it,
yeah,
like, for fact, and prove what happens after you die beyond the shadow of a doubt.
Would we still be religion, or would that provide our life with meaning?
I think that I don't even know.
These are big questions.
That should, at that point, that should kind of eliminate the need for a religion.
I will say this. This is episode 3, season 3, probably the most civil, focused conversation we've ever had on this podcast.
There are only 4 people.
Hands down, that might have something to do with it. There's not like 9 people.
Well, I mean, there was that one where it was just you and that other guy.
Oh, yeah. Who was that other guy? Who even knows or cares?
What?
No, Raul. Shout out to Raul, former vice president.
He's going to, like, watch these.
Currently at SMU. And yeah.
Shout out, Raul.
You've been replaced.
You have been. You've been replaced, and the
I
replacement
do
is
have
great.
a question,
Yeah.
maybe to think about, and it's true we haven't touched on. I mean, somebody that was a critic of religions might say, okay, well, you haven't talked about a lot of people in these traditions that are compulsed,
Yeah.
that are simply forced to believe or act in certain ways. And so we seem to be progressing towards, at least in parts of the world, towards this idea of freedom and non-compulsion, and we're talking about these issues obviously without threat of life or anything, being thrown in jail. Yeah. But do you foresee, are you hopeful, you all, on or maybe pessimistic, in the next 100 years or so that humanity will come to a point where we can be religiously diverse and think different things and not have dismemberment or executions or torture, etc., if you don't agree?
I think that might almost be in our nature as well. the fact that humans are social groups and that we see things as a way of in-group, out-group, and we see different or unknown things, we see them as bad. If we don't, if it would take people, everybody, like, or the majority of people, to look past the superficial and to actually think deep about other people at a certain level. Even now, even in this country where we ground ourselves in religious liberty, we still see people being beaten for their religious beliefs. We still see people being beaten for their sexual orientation and things like that. The things that are just personality based or that are not threatening us in any manner just because they are different. So I think that the only real way for it to change is for maybe humanity to evolve in a way.
So you're remaining hopeful for that?
No, I'm pessimistic.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
more on the pessimist side. What about you, Anthony?
Well, I'm pessimistic about it because, for the reason that most religions preach the same thing, the golden rule. Treat others the way you'd like to be treated, you know? Most religions preach, don't be a terrible person, and people probably won't be terrible to you. But we don't see the same thing. We see difference. We see, oh, he's Muslim and I'm Christian. I can't like him. I don't believe in what he believes in. Or, oh, he doesn't believe in a god. He believes in a Buddha. I don't even know what that means. That's dumb. I don't respect it.
So is there something inherent to religions that is as exclusive in a sense, do you think?
Yesterday a point was made by, I think, Emma, the communications officer, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, a point was made that religion can bring everyone together because everyone believes in something.
They can share that
they have that in common. Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
They can share that they have that in common. However, a lot of people don't really do that. A lot of people just focus on the negative, focus on the different, and that's what divides everyone right now.
I see. Okay.
Oh, those are really fantastic, articulate responses. Guys, just to introduce, we have a few more guests entering the studio. You all want to introduce yourselves?
Oh, yeah, y'all know me.
Good to see her.
Introduction needed.
You already Mr. Ewing. Very pleased to see him. I was just watching him
Nice.
with Moore and Friends last hour. He's he's got a very cool repertoire. His
right. I appreciate that.
Yeah, he's got a lot of wisdom to share.
Can you
All
say the
right.
same thing about me real quick?
Can we isolate that?
I'm
Replace Ewing with Nancy,
Yeah.
and make that a promos.
I'm kidding.
Replace Manzi with Clay.
You want to introduce yourself?
Hi. Does it work?
Mhm.
I'm Jennifer, and
Hey, Jen.
so I want to try something different, and here I am. I like to
Nice.
talk a lot, so might as well be here.
Nice.
This is real different.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shout out Jennifer.
Shout out Jennifer. Yeah. So
Shout
Jennifer,
out to Richland Choir.
and this is great. This happened last week as well. Students who just want to check out the studio, they come in and they figure out what we're doing, and they grab a seat and get some experience, get some exposure. So we're happy to have you. Yeah, we're talking about, and again, this is an extension of the Philosophy Club. We're talking about whether or not religion can one day become obsolete. And that's led us to a question of exactly what religion is, how it serves us, the role it plays in our life, not just individually, but kind of historically and socially.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, welcome. Light chatter, idle talk. Yeah.
Small talk.
Coffee
Small
stuff.
talk.
Easy stuff.
So
It's
No
kind of
thought.
hard to talk about religion, though, without, stepping on anyone's toes.
We're open to it here.
You know?
yeah, you can step on some toes.
Step on everyone who's listening. Step on all of their toes.
Alrighty then.
Road boots.
I read this thing online. It was pretty interesting. It was saying religion is like music, and your God is like a different DJ, right? So in the end of the day, it's the same song being played, but by different DJs.
Mhm.
You know, and I feel like that difference in who you believe or what you believe shouldn't create violence.
We were just talking about this actually. Ewing asked the question whether you think that because there are a lot of places who are being more, they're promoting religious liberty more and accepting other people's religions. He asked the question whether you think that in the future there could potentially be a place where all religions are accepted, and whether you're optimistic that that reality could actually become true, or pessimistic towards that.
Well, honestly, from my point of view, from what I've seen in the past in history, is that people don't learn from history because we keep repeating it over and over again. You know, I watch a lot of videos about the Holocaust or like, you know, the civil rights movement, you know, and this is just a little did you know fact, but X-Men was created for the Civil War right movement.
Really?
The mutants were like a symbolic meaning of a different race.
Huh.
And you know, people that were normal people, they looked at those mutants, they're like, oh, you're different, you know, or you're dangerous, we should kill you. You know, it's kind of like the same view back in the 60s or even further back. You know?
Okay. Yeah, so there is this, and that kind of plays into what you're saying, this idea that sort of what you might call artistic representations of things, they, depending on the medium, they tend to influence the way the material is presented. So again, something like religion in terms of art and stuff like that, it appeals to you in such a way where it's not hitting your intellect, at least not right away. First, it's hitting your senses. You see how beautiful something is. You see how small you are next to a huge statue, something along these lines. And then from there, perhaps it becomes a springboard to engage in them in these religious principles that produce the beautiful art in a more intellectual, analytic fashion. Here's something else I wanted to consider, guys. We got a few minutes left. There's a lot of talk about human nature and how it's in our nature to do this and nature to do that. That presupposes you believe in human nature.
Okay. Maybe some of us are going to double back on what we said about human nature, right? Like what were we saying? Something about it's in our all our animal instincts and
that was last week's topic.
Yeah, they
Shout out to last week.
Shout out September.
R.I.P. last week.
Right. It's but is it in our nature to contemplate our own existence? I think I could be contradicting myself from a week ago, but yeah, it's probably you know.
I have an
I hear you.
interesting story towards that topic, actually. I was at work the other day, and one of my customers was telling me a story about how, you know, when people get mad and they get really angry and they say things that are really horrible or they do something that's so out of their character, and they go, oh, you know, I don't know what came over me. I don't know. I don't have that in me. But you do. If you didn't have it, then it wouldn't come out in the first place. You know? So I feel like, I don't know. I feel like,
yeah, that's just one way people can want to absolve themselves of responsibility. Is blame it on the devil? No, that was all you, bro.
yeah. Man up to your responsibility. If you said it, and let's say it was a mistake or whatever you've done, just man up to it. Or even if you're a woman, you know, woman up to it.
Yeah,
So.
that's what I'm saying. You heard it here first. Woman up to it. Philosophy Club.
Woman up. That's our slogan.
Hashtag woman up to it.
No, but that's interesting. And so,
Like Wonder Woman's robe makes you tell the truth.
Shout out women.
Yeah.
Shout out XX chromosomes.
Yeah.
so guys, okay, let me. Okay. Shut up. Yeah, shut it up. What? So, do you see religion going extinct? Now, because this is the final thing that came up last time. Why is it that particular religions, go extinct, but religion itself seems to continue to persevere?
Well, like I said earlier,
Pardon me, sir.
I was just gonna go back to what I said earlier with like there aren't really many pagans anymore because most of the pagans got not brainwashed, but like their faith got replaced with a monotheistic religion or Buddhism or Hinduism. Wait, no, pagans were in Europe. Never mind. It was mostly monotheism.
Okay.
And like most pagan beliefs aren't even, oh hey, what's a wood nymph god? You know, it's like, and I don't see religion going extinct, even if we get to the hypothetical point where science can prove what happens after you die and what the meaning of life is in concrete evidence, because many people are just like even if the answer is right in front of you, they just want to go by how they've been doing things for however long they were doing it. God, things are distracting me.
sorry. But are you done?
Yeah.
Okay, I had a quick question. Do you think that if religion were ever to become obsolete, people would be better or worse off? Would they be better or worse beings?
If religion became obsolete, it wouldn't exactly.
We still have our laws. We still have everything that we do have, but would people?
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like if it became obsolete, then it would be obsolete and life would go on, whether it's still practiced or not.
Do you think it would have no effect on how people act?
I mean, your question, the premise. Somebody help me out here.
Well, okay. So
I mean, like if it were obsolete and we don't need deities and supernatural afterlife and such ideas, then we life would go on. Civilization would carry on as it did, as if it didn't exist.
Well, if religion were to go obsolete, people would have less things to hate each other over and discriminate about each other over and fight wars for no reason over.
You think so?
You don't think we'd find other things?
No, it'd be one less thing, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm not saying we'd find I'm not saying we wouldn't find new things, but
It'd be one less thing.
no one, if no religion existed, then we couldn't, you know what I'm saying? We couldn't judge someone on their religion because no one has one.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. But Anthony, it's kind of like contrary to what you're saying before when you were like religion gives us structure, gives us order, which is less chaotic. But it seems like wars and disagreements and stuff is chaos. It's a lack of order. So it can't. I would bring up the following reasons. I think you're right on both accounts. Can religion both be the source of, on the one hand, disorder and chaos, and on the other hand, order and I guess clarity?
Like a lot of people, not a lot of people. It's kind of a double-edged sword in that, like, I'm gonna go to a creation story, I guess. So, like, Pandora's box. They were instructed not to open the box, and they opened the box, and that let all the evil things into the world. It was going to happen
they eventually. They should have
eventually.
just kept the box closed. Right?
If they would have kept the box closed, nothing would have ever happened. But they were bound to open the box eventually.
Ah, okay.
So, like,
Kind of like Adam and Eve.
yeah, like Adam and Eve. They could have just lived in paradise and did nothing and never aged forever. But Eve had to.
Eve was hungry.
Yeah, but that part kind of upsets me. Why does it has to be the woman?
Well,
It's Eve's fault. That's why Adam.
it wasn't
Eve.
Eve's.
It
It wasn't
Pandora.
Eve's.
Mr. Ewing, chime in, please. Yeah, I was. I heard what you said before. You there?
He's asking, I don't know.
Yeah,
He's
so
directing something towards you.
what was the question? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Adam and Eve. I'm hanging on the cliff here.
Yeah, you're all right. Yeah, she was saying about. I heard you say something about how there are two different stories of origin stories.
Right. Generally, the first chapter of Genesis is the 6-day account, right? And the second chapter begins the specific story of the first parents. In chapter 1, male and female are created simultaneously in the image of God, right? No mention of Adam and Eve per se.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second chapter, beginning with verse 4, makes the creation appear as if it happens in one day. And then the man is formed from the dust of the ground, and then the woman is a derivative creature from his side, to complete, right? Because the man is alone. At least that's the stated reason. But It is interesting that in the tradition, in the traditions, Judaism and early Christianity, that the woman bears the brunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's the one that supposedly is beguiled by the serpent. But Adam is there and equally bears the consequence, right?
protest.
So he willfully partakes, and so at least according to the narrative, the only reason they can be held accountable is because of their free will to choose. Now, the way that's interpreted is interesting, because some traditions say that was a good thing. A lot of people don't know that the logo for Apple computers, the apple with the bite, is supposed to be from the
tree of
story of the
knowledge.
Garden of Eden. And so
I didn't know that. Wow.
it's
Whoa.
the idea of the beautiful fall, right? That we wouldn't have knowledge if there wouldn't have been this sort of leaving innocence behind. Now we have to suffer as a result, but then we gain access to knowledge, and we give up our mortality as sort of an exchange for that. But there are so many different ways that story has been interpreted. Another one is apple, right? I just brought that up. The fruit is mentioned generically, but it's not
actually an
specifically
apple.
stated what fruit it was. So in the Middle East, there have been some interpretations that it was a fig,
Really?
or because they have fig leaves,
water.
right?
Oh, wow. I didn't know
Or
that.
that it was possibly a pomegranate, right? Because you're talking about Mesopotamia. You're not talking about Northern Europe
Oh,
with
yeah.
apple trees
See,
necessarily. So.
this is why I like it here so much. Is these facts throw me way back.
Way
Well,
back to the AD.
You guys seen that movie Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
I actually
In all of
started-
its incarnations, yeah.
Well, the true original story isn't from Texas. It's from Wisconsin. And it's a guy named Ed Gein.
Right.
And he started killing only women. Women who curse, women who weren't considered ladylike. And
Sounds like a good dude.
Right. So he got this idea from an early age because his mom was very religious, and she would read the Bible to him a lot.
I see.
So because of the stories in the Bibles and the way you view it, the way you interpret or understand it yourself,
Yeah.
he thought that women were evil. Because of women, that's why the human race had to sacrifice or suffer. So that was I know it's kind of
interesting.
random, but
That's very interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And so then it's always interesting, these things, right? And so his response is to eliminate the evil women, right? And
Right.
therefore break one of the 10 Commandments, which is you shall not murder. So,
He was trying to play God.
right. So that's an interesting line that's crossed sometimes with these guys like the David Koreshes, et cetera, where
Yeah.
religious killing.
because they're in the place of God, they're the ones that get to mete out the judgment, and as opposed to the rest of us, right, that have to deal with the. But that's an interesting. I'm glad you brought that story up because I did not make that connection.
Yeah, and I think it reinforces what Anthony was saying earlier, this idea that people can take religion and interpret it as they will, potentially, and that could justify forms of violence and hatred.
Sure.
But that, I'm just, I don't know if eliminating religion would eliminate, I guess, I don't know, it's hard to really consider and speculate in that way. I think because I want to bring that back to Anthony's point. It seems like where people get confused, and maybe this is why there's organized religion, is how to interpret something sacred. They yearn for something sacred. They hunger to incorporate into his or her life, but the question becomes how to do so. And so organized religion might play the role of the sieve almost, or like the of the streamlining process, where it sort of helps you to be religious well, which could maybe
like religion 101.
something like that, or like moral interpretation 101 or something along these lines.
Do your research. It's
Yeah.
it always like every person when you're born with the religion that your family has, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm half Asian and half Caucasian. My family are Buddhist.
Okay.
So when I was born and throughout my childhood, that's all I knew was going to the temple and doing things that way. But the older I get, and I did my own research on my own, and see like, oh, this kind of makes sense, or oh, I kind of like what that said right there, because sometimes you have to kind of grow your own wings and fly to see like, oh, that's what it looks like, the world, kind of thing. So
Yeah. And so you wonder if we could, and the question is, can we ever outgrow religion?
no,
And yeah, so people seem
I
to
think we
suggest-
can.
And
I disagree.
back to a point I made earlier. No, I'm kidding.
So I'm
If-
intrigued in that last response. You think we can outgrow religion? Maybe talk about that just for a minute.
Yeah.
And all of its supernatural. I think we can go out its supernatural ideas. It is it's sometimes we're pressured. Several out of all the ways that people subscribe to a particular ideology is usually because of some kind of social pressure, or of course, like you said, being born into it. But once religion as a response to our largest questions, like is there an afterlife, and I heard it said in the group meeting yesterday that religion is used for knowledge we don't have yet, but that's where I consider it obsolete already. I don't see it very useful. Is only the pursuit of knowledge is.
But I feel like sometimes we restrict
Real quick,
ourselves from that knowledge.
Dave the
too.
Shockwave, he's sick today, so we have leeway to go as long as.
Oh, good to know. Yeah.
Dave the
Shockwave.
Shockwave, sorry. You can go on.
No,
you can keep going.
What?
Totally forgot.
Okay, so
I actually had something that I wanted to
I
say.
feel like-
and I feel like.
Oh yeah, man.
I feel like
okay.
I'm gonna let you finish.
I feel
but
like the. What's up?
Can
Sorry,
I
guys.
actually chime in really quick with one thing that I wanted to say? There was so I think that you said that religion, we could take the supernatural out of it and the morals would still be good, but would religion still have its flavor if the supernatural was taken out of it? Like, would Jesus still be Jesus if he didn't walk on water but walked on a sidewalk?
no.
Yeah, actually, that's just one possibly. That's one positive
Piece of the
impact. One positive impact on the world is when it is used to justify doing a public good, or doing some charitable act or work. And in other ways, it can be used to do terrible wrong, even under the guise of
Righteousness.
of a benevolent even when religion's participants take on a benevolent cloak, but they could be actually harming people by building hospitals and refusing to carry instruments and staff and personnel that can help women with reproductive issues. Those Catholic hospitals should turn around and stop taking tax dollars. That's what I'm saying.
All right, interesting. Yeah, and I'll throw this out there as well. The supernatural component of religion. It seems to me that seems to be the quote unquote beef a lot of people have with religion.
Oh.
Is that on the one hand, of course, you can't prove that which is supernatural, and that's not inconsistent with what most religions claim anyway. But beyond that, it's this idea of, again, this is somebody like Nietzsche's points. Whenever you are measured over and against something greater than you, you always see yourself as less than what you could be. So we're talking about models and things like that. Again, if you understand that you were born with inherited sin, you're born behind the 8 ball, and you need something like religion just to get you to the point where you're no longer sinful. It really does seem as though you're born with this sort of inferiority complex. and you have to work really hard just to become decent, just to become worthy, perhaps, to receive God's grace. Again, this idea that religion is work, and people are already overworked enough. How would we respond to that, I wonder? How have we responded to
Mr.
that?
Ewing, that's one of my questions to you. Is there any other religious communication systems that are less prone to corruption, like greed, or whenever it's used to justify a conquest?
Yeah, probably the simple answer to that is no.
Okay.
I mean, religion is a local thing, and hence the different types, etc. But it's also a universal. It's dealing with some of the. You want to talk about human natures. We talked about this the time that I was here in the spring semester. Why is it that in these traditions they generally start out with minimal iconography, and within a century or two there's imagery, right? I think that's something deep-seated in the human psyche that needs, for most of us, apart from, like I say, the Mother Teresas or the Martin Luther Kings, etc., or the Gandhis, most of us need something to focus on, or we get pretty fidgety pretty quickly, right? And so in Buddhism, for example, it's a good question to ask. Would the Buddha be horrified that people pay homage to statues of him? You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Or to bring it home, right? Would Jesus appreciate the fact that that he's depicted artistically and venerated that way? I just think if we're open-minded, we would say, okay, for most of the folks on the planet, we need the artistic embellishments to help us sort of leave the world behind and focus for a half an hour, right? Yeah. And so religion sometimes is pragmatic in the sense that it helps us out. It knows that we're weak individuals. And now I don't know if that's a good answer to your question, but the question I think was getting at, is there a place that we can get beyond sort of our petty divisions and I would say I remain hopeful for that, but it is interesting that religion has been used as you mentioned for all sorts of defenses for conquest and territory, etc., and it's still used to this day, right? Something maybe that drives some of these groups is the idea that we're doing God's work. We're expunging the evil from the planet, and we're filling up hell with the souls of the damned, right?
Yeah, but then I just call them disingenuous.
Okay.
I mean, once you, that's what I find so distasteful about proselytization is once they, of course, these things are meant for others to live their life by, but it could go wrong very quickly when false prophets take advantage of each other and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine a greater justification in anything than to truly believe that you're doing God's will, and that if you're divinely justified. I think that, that gives a lot of people the feeling like, well,
I can do anything basically.
Exactly, because it's righteous. I want to get back to this idea of again understanding how religion helps us, because again we have difficulty maybe focusing. It's hard to go right in from your everyday concerns to something like deep reflection theologically. So the poetry helps us kind of be entertained, not entertained. It piques our interest and intrigues us in a way that it's not merely intellectual. I think
it's like a good speech.
Yeah. But the question becomes, well, we feel maybe we need that because we're so weak. But who taught us we were weak? Seems like the religion. Seems like we learned that we've inherited sin and we need this help, and then we internalize it. And so, is it a self-fulfilling prophecy?
That's actually there was a guy in the last semester's philosophy club. He was a marketer.
Oh yeah, I remember him.
I don't remember what his name was, but shout out.
Yeah,
He basically ran us through a brief description of what marketing is, and it kind of fits into what religion or what Nietzsche says philosophy does, where a marketer or a salesperson will come to your house, they'll look at your backyard, they will tell you you have a hole in the backyard, and then they'll try to sell you a way to fill it. So the religion tells you that you are an unholy person. You are born and you inherited sin, but this is how you fill it. Socrates will tell you that you do not know the truth. And this is how you obtain the truth. This is how you reach the truth. So it's kind of like religion can do that to you, where it provides you with the solution to the problem that it created, or it provides you with the solution to the problem that you didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
Last thing, because I gotta go, but I feel like people gave themselves the inferiority complex because nothing just came up and asked one day, oh, what's the meaning of life? What are you living for? What are you doing anything for? Mm-hmm. You just sat there and wondered about that and made themselves, like, they are small in the grand scheme of things, mm-hmm. but in the grand scheme of things, everyone is small. However, that doesn't necessarily give everything meaning or give meaning to, but insight for the need of a religion. Mm-hmm. People did that themselves. Peace out.
Jeez.
Good
Oh, that's pretty dramatic. The phones are lighting up here.
Yeah.
Call in.
Anthony, they're pitchforks.
Anthony, go get Jack to help fix this for me.
Let me see that.
We've
Good
lost
job.
our Skype ability here, so.
It's a vlog now.
I knocked the tiny eye of Sauron off of its perch, and now I can't see the.
have it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, speaking of,
Keeping it professional here, the Philosophy Club Radio Hour.
What were you going to say?
Yeah, what's up?
I was saying, speaking of Gandhi, what you guys mentioned about earlier, you know, in our eyes, when we hear Gandhi, we think
I
like
broke
a
it.
holy man, right?
Mhm.
Like he's perfect. He has a heart of gold. He cannot sin.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, up to his, like when he was 70 years old, he would sleep in bed with two naked 12-year-old girls.
Oh, yeah, his daughters.
Yeah, one of them was actually his niece.
Oh.
And he did this to say that he was testing his like manliness or, you know, his self-conscious or whatever.
His control?
His
his
discipline.
control,
Yeah.
his discipline,
Yeah.
self-discipline, exactly. But
Did
to
he
me, I felt
did
like,
he pass the test? By the way?
well, yeah.
Hopefully.
So
guess we'll never really know.
supposedly, you know, but I just feel like a lot of people manipulate religion into the way they want it, and these people.
Thanks, dude.
You know, I guess that's where the quote that goes, you know, stand for something that you believe in or you fall for anything. You know, and I think like that's really important because if you don't know what you're talking about or you don't know nothing about religion and you meet this guy who looks like Gandhi, you're like, oh man, he must be really smart. He knows the answers to life. But yet, he's a pervert. You know? I mean, long story short, he's a pervert. He
Gandhi
can't-
is a pervert. You've heard it here first,
Yeah,
folks.
I'm sorry, but
Phones are lighting up.
Start clickbaiting the YouTube
you know,
video.
documentaries, do your research. And, you know, it's not just Gandhi, it's a lot of other people,
This will
you
be the
know,
clip we
like,
put on Facebook.
who else? I can't, like, even Bill Clinton, you know, he's our president, he's really smart, he went to a really good school, but what was his weakness? A woman. That's, you know, and that's what he got in trouble for. So, I don't know, sometimes, that was, like, a little off topic, my bad.
No, I followed the thread there. I think I see what you're saying. So then let me ask you this: what do we make of all that? What do we do with that? These experiences, seeing these people. It seems like this. It seems like, well, maybe not with President Clinton, but with Gandhi at least. It's kind of putting. Here's the thing. He wants to put what he preaches to the test. He wants to really practice what he preaches, and maybe he had some doubts of his own, so he wanted to subject himself to sort of a trial kind of thing. However, it seems to me as though the whole purpose, well, I shouldn't say the whole purpose, but a big purpose of religion is that, you know, you don't have to seek out temptation. You don't have to seek out trial and tribulation and maybe self-flagellation, that
You don't
life
have
will
to
provide you
prove
with
to
those
nobody.
opportunities.
Mhm.
What is that?
You don't have to prove to nobody what you believe in your heart. It
Except-
shows through your actions alone.
What about spreading the word and whatnot? Doesn't the Bible teach to teach others that don't know, or do you live your own life?
Honestly, to be honest with you, I feel like in life, that's something no one can teach you ever. No matter what school you go to, no one can teach you like, hey, you're at the red light and you see this 9-year-old lady carrying 2 bags of groceries. Are you going to stop and walk her over to the end? No one teaches you that. Maybe, hopefully your parents do. But, I feel like in life you have that little guilty conscience in your head. And
Empathy.
oh, yeah, okay, that, whatever. And it makes you think like, oh, you're not thinking with your brain though. You're thinking with your heart, because your heart's telling you, hey, this poor 9-year-old lady needs help. And even though she didn't ask me, or even though she's not paying me to do it, I'm going to do it because it satisfies my heart.
And because you would want somebody to help you.
Well, I mean, true, that too. But see, this is what I think when I see that 9-year-old lady. I see my grandma. Would you ever let your grandma walk across the street with 2 heavy grocery bags in her hand without even like glancing at her to make sure that, to even help her? How can you do that?
Yeah.
So to me, it's like, how can you not help someone when obviously they need help? Kind of put yourself in their shoes, or someone that you care or love about in their shoes.
Yeah, but why can't you come to that conclusion rationally? Why would you need religion to bring you there? I guess that's the.
We don't.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Not everyone has a conscience. Like serial killers.
Yeah.
They don't go, oh yeah, if I kill this poor little Girl Scout, her parents are gonna be really sad. They don't think like that. They really don't care. But they're really good at pretending like they care.
Yeah, and so that could be something of a different kind of, I guess referred to as disorders, whatever the clinical term is. Yeah, and I'm not so sure if religion is necessarily the balm for that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's. Let's look at some case studies from when some faith-based institutions held criminally insane people, right?
Yeah, that's historically accurate. No, you're right, and so I think that gets to your question there of again, why do we need religion other than the fact that other people in our society need religion? I don't personally, but I'm glad people are religious, and I'm glad there's religion. That kind of seems like I think what you're getting at. And some people need it, and so we need to have it. But those who don't need it can kind of guide their own lives and live in such a way where they're conducting themselves with integrity and honesty and sincerity and the kind of things that you learn from religion.
But you're still going to feel that empty feeling, though. Even if you're, let's say, from what
I think
you
that's your
said,
point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
you're still going to feel that emptiness. Like, what? Like, there's so many questions, unanswered questions in your head. And as a human being, we're very curious, and we don't like waiting for answers.
Someone actually came, they gave a personal experience about how they have that same problem in the club meeting, and they said that they almost feel jealous of people who are deep into religion because they have these questions almost answered for them already.
No. You know what? I know this might not be very nice to say, but
Okay.
most of the time, the most religious people are the most hypocrites.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this because from dealing with people at work and customer service, it's always that lady who preaches the most. Oh, I love God. God is great. God is this. But yet, real quick, they will look down upon you if you don't have like a Michael Kors purse, or if your hair's not cut right. All right. Or if, or if you curse or something, they're like, oh, that person is bad, But to be religious or in that thing, I thought you're supposed to be.
Only God can judge me. But
Right.
Well, if you don't have a Michael Kors purse, I mean, you have no business associating yourself with me personally. I mean, how could you honor God? You can honor your own
thank
fashion
goodness.
sense.
Thank goodness I bought one really quick before I came here.
Well, that's why I let her in. She had one. Yeah, okay, that's fair. Look, there was somebody in the club meeting yesterday who said, religion for her is obsolete. because she has a difficult time relating on a personal level to the major figures in something like Christianity. So she said, physically, I certainly don't resemble this figure that everybody depicts. And in terms of the particular ways in which people need like moral rehabilitation, she's like, I don't personally need that. So religion in my life, she says, it's more of an antagonistic thing than anything else. Maybe along the lines of what you're saying here, Jennifer. But what's so fascinating to me is that she made it very clear that it's hard for her to emulate Jesus or emulate Christianity when, as she said, she bears no direct resemblance to Jesus and certainly came up in a different social, economic context than somebody like him. I'm paraphrasing here, but the point being is this, that it seems as though you're in a tough spot when you can't relate to the majority religion in your society or community. And she seemed to be implying that if I can't relate to it personally, I have a hard time seeing how it can help me in life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you have all sorts of people who have had negative experiences as a child in their particular tradition. And it's a shame on the one level because, maybe Father so-and-so, like the priest in their local parish, smacked them or said something not so nice. And so they internalize that. And you meet people like that occasionally. Said, when was the last time you've been to church? Oh, well, I haven't been to church in 30 years because, Father so-and-so insulted me when I was an altar boy. And you think, what a shame, right, that they've turned themselves off to that because of a negative experience. But on the other hand, you want to validate that and say, yeah, that's where the human failings come into the factor, because you gotta recognize that we're all fallible, and that and so this woman, I'm assuming, is not resonating with a masculine Jesus, and maybe not with the motherly representations of the prominent woman in Christianity, which is the Virgin Mary, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's an important thing, I think, that we have to confront. And sometimes I've known people that have come out of a Christian tradition, or say the Jewish tradition, and they say Buddhism appeals to me because it doesn't really have a personal creator God that I have to deal with. I can be connected, but I don't have that patriarchal kind of masculine whatever it is looking over my shoulder, in a sense. So but I think this is an important question, that there are plenty of people out there that have had very negative experiences being raised in a religious tradition, and so sometimes that is an explanation as to why they're turned off about religion. So
I think so. I think that's probably one of the most common explanations, I would guess. And on some level, I can relate to that questioning, and perhaps this is where the beauty and the religion and the art come in. Or the beauty and the poetry of art and religion come together to find a way to bridge that gap, to find a way to show you and bring you back around to the more universal beauty of something, so that you don't kind of get lost in the specifics of, well, this doesn't really relate to me in any real particular way. Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean it can also offer you something as well.
If you do your research, you will find a way to relate. Like, I watched this documentary about the sheet that covered Jesus Christ when he passed, and they did a blood DNA sample of it.
I've seen this, I think.
And he
the Shroud of Turin.
Yeah, exactly. And he was type AB. I'm type AB.
Yeah.
So when I watched that, no lie, I was so excited. I was running around the house. I'm related to God. Yes.
That's
and
awesome.
it made me feel, I know
Closer
it sounds
to him.
kind of, ridiculous, but it made me feel closer to him. To think that we have the same blood running through our veins.
Yeah.
It made me believe even more.
And I think we touched upon that when I was here in the spring, Professor.
so.
I'm not sure, but sometimes that comes up in my world religions classes, say Shroud of Turin or the foot of Abraham at the Kaaba shrine in Mecca, or if you go to various Buddhist countries, they may show you a footprint of the Buddha.
Right.
And sometimes students will say, I mean, is it or isn't it, right? And my point is, for the person of faith, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if that was, now it very well could be the shroud that Jesus was wrapped in. But the fact that it's received and revered as a connection, I think you illustrated that point. And so there would be no way that we could go back 4,000 years
Right.
and corroborate that Abraham went, okay, here's my footprint, right? Or the Buddha, likewise, right? There would be no way that we could do that archaeologically speaking, and as a person of faith myself, there would be no reason to do that anyway. The point is that for those hajis, for those people that come to the Kaaba, to Mecca to pray, and they see that tangible link with their ancestor Abraham, and they're worshiping the God of Abraham there, that is the footprint of Abraham. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so I think that, again, most of us need a tangible link with these founding figures of our traditions. Some people might say, like Mother Teresa maybe, I don't know, would say, okay, I don't need to venerate the Shroud of Turin to know that Jesus is real for me, right?
Right.
But for most of us, I think it's kind of cool that...
It's comforting.
Right. That there's a tangible link, and we're all different, of course. But
Right.
anyway, that was a very poignant.
Yeah, no, I think
story.
that's great, and that's yeah. I mean, I love this emphasis again on the tangible, and I think even calling it that tangible is important, because again, we are tangible. We are bodily. We have 5 senses, so sensorially pleasing things appeal to us, like something beautiful and things along these lines.
The color yellow and red are known to make you hungry. That's why McDonald's, that's their logo.
Shout
color.
out McDonald's.
Yeah. So don't look at yellow and red, you guys.
Yeah, that's right.
Is McDonald's the religion of the future?
It is.
Oh my god.
I already practice it.
Have you guys seen the
I have a
movie
McChicken.
about McDonald's?
Big Macs are going to be the new community.
Is it Super Size Me?
No, not that movie. It's the movie
The Founder.
Yeah, The Founder. Thank you.
Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
He made McDonald's?
Ray Kroc.
Well, there's these
Yeah.
2 brothers, and they made McDonald's, right? And this one
They're
guy
great
came
people.
along. He was like, "Oh, well, that's a good idea. You guys are
Oh,
so
Snow
fast."
Whataburger.
So, long story short, he took their restaurant chain from
Damn.
underneath
Oh,
these
wow.
brothers. Yeah.
I need to watch this.
Yeah, this movie would kind of make you change your mind about eating McDonald's. Like, you're like,
I
you know
still
what?
support
They're
it.
so money hungry.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, but they killed these brothers' dreams.
Hey man, good
You
business
know?
is good business.
It's called free market capitalism.
Yeah, well, and he
America.
sold the idea
Pull yourself up
and
by the bootstraps.
internationalized it, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
whereas those guys were content with having their mom and pop stand.
Yeah.
And
That's
so,
true.
but very well portrayed by Michael Keaton, that
Good
actor.
I got to see this movie because it keeps popping up on my Netflix. I just haven't watched it.
Yeah,
Founders.
it's worth it. He sort of started out as a traveling salesman himself, I think,
Yeah.
and then came across these guys and took their idea and marketed it. So
Isn't that what Thomas Edison or he was
Thomas
called?
Jefferson?
Or the guy that invented the light bulb?
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson.
Is Edison, I think.
Oh, it's Edison.
Edison.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Thomas
my God.
Edison,
Anything
yeah.
with a sin in it kind
Uh-huh.
of
Right.
confuses me.
Apparently, he was called like the Wizard of some place. Wizard of some. It was
Waverly.
no, not Waverly
Oh, my
Place.
bad.
But it was he had like a kind of like a firm where he would have people create inventions for him, and then he would put his name onto the invention,
Yes.
and I think that's how he got his name
Yes.
associated with the light bulb.
The
Really?
guy
Yeah.
I didn't know
that I heard that the guy that created the light bulb, his name was Nicholas.
Tesla.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay,
He made
and
that.
he was crazy, because you know how sometimes people who are
Eccentric.
too smart can be a little bit abnormal.
Yes, we both know that over here on the side of
Yeah.
the booth.
So,
Eccentric is the nice
Yeah.
way of saying it.
eccentric,
but he
mentally
like,
deranged.
he lived in a satellite
You're fired.
or something like that, somewhere far away from other people.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is just like a theory, what they believe that the government, men and agents, the tie and the sunglasses came
Mm-hmm.
and killed him and gave the idea to Thomas.
Wow. Interesting.
That might be the conspiracy version.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I
the
think so.
conspiracy, yeah. Which are interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so I guess what time is it? Actually, wait, yeah, we have
We're
until.
over, yeah.
But we have until.
Dave the Shockwave is.
Are you all here until midnight?
No, I actually gotta go now.
We're
24-hour.
Virtually?
This is a pledge drive.
Until next.
Right.
Until next week.
The phones are
Yeah.
lighting up, as you say. I think Dr. K is
Nice.
on line
Nice to meet you.
6.
Yeah, she is. We have her on hold.
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
give you- I can give you a flyer for the flyer.
Guys,
Oh,
All right, so let's maybe we should wrap it up here. It's been this was a great conversation, y'all. So yeah, Jennifer, thanks for coming.
Shout out Jennifer. Shout out every single
Thank you
thing
guys
that
for having
exists.
me.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me just as sort of a spontaneous
It's great.
walk-in guest. I appreciate the conversation.
The best things are spontaneous.
We
I was
take
supposed to be
walk-ins.
talking to my counselor, but I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to take Mr. Ewing's class someday. It's probably going to be pretty cool.
Highly recommended. All right. Pleasure, guys. Well, okay, so you're listening to KDUX Web Radio, broadcast live from Richland College in Dallas, Texas. We're the voice of Richland College. Views expressed on this show are our own unless otherwise stated and do not reflect the opinion of KDUX Web Radio, Richland College, or the DCCCD. So, guys, once again, we're meeting next week in EO 76 from 2 to 3 p.m. on, again, Tuesday. The topic of which is currently under debate. If you'd like to pitch a topic, check us out on our Facebook page. Go to Facebook and search Richland Philosophy Club. If you want to see us on Twitter, go to @RLC Philosophy. And pitch your topic. Again, all the topics in Philosophy Club are student generated. So it's whatever you guys want to talk about. We talk about it. And we bring out the philosophical components of whatever it is you're interested in. So yeah, definitely stop by. Looking forward to next week. Should be fun as well. So thanks for listening, y'all. We got to do an extra special long segment today, and hopefully the DJ Shockwave gets better, Dave the Shockwave, and guys, stay tuned for Prunk Pops coming up at 4:00 from 4 to 5. Have a good one, y'all, and think about it.